Sleeping Murder by Agatha Christie. Chapter 3. Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle. She died young. Raymond West and his wife did all they could to make young Giles's wife feel welcome. It was not their fault that Gwenda found them secretly rather alarming. Raymond, with his odd appearance, rather like a pouncing raven, his sweep of hair and his sudden crescendos of incomprehensible conversation left Gwenda round-eyed and nervous. Both he and Joan seemed to talk a language of their own. Gwenda had never been plunged in a highbrow atmosphere before, and practically all its terms were strange. "We've planned to take you to a show or two," said Raymond while Gwenda was drinking gin and rather wishing she could have had a cup of tea after her journey. Gwenda brightened up immediately. "The ballet tonight at Sadler's Wells, and tomorrow we've got a birthday party on for my quite incredible Aunt Jane, the Duchess of Malfi with Gilgood, and on Friday, you simply must see They Walked Without Feet, translated from the Russian, absolutely the most significant piece of drama for the last 20 years. It's at the Little Whitmore Theater." Gwenda expressed herself grateful for these plans for her entertainment. After all, when Giles came home, they would go together to the musical shows and all of that. She flinched slightly at the prospect of They Walked Without Feet, but supposed that she might enjoy it. Only the point about significant plays was that you usually didn't. "You'll adore my Aunt Jane," said Raymond. "She's what I should describe as a perfect period piece, Victorian to the core. All her dressing tables have had their legs swathed in chintz. She lives in a village, the kind of village where nothing ever happens, exactly like a stagnant pond." "Something did happen there once," his wife said dryly. Raymond waved his hand. "A mere drama of passion. Crude, no subtlety to it." "You enjoyed it frightfully at the time," Joan reminded him with a slight twinkle. "I sometimes enjoy playing village cricket," said Raymond with dignity. "Anyways, Aunt Jane distinguished herself over that murder." "Oh, she's no fool. She adores problems." "Problems?" said Gwenda, her mind flying to arithmetic. Raymond waved a hand. "Any kind of problems. Why the grocer's wife took her umbrella to the church social on a fine evening. Why a gill of pickled shrimps was found where it was. What happened to the vicar's surplice. All grist to my Aunt Jane's mill. So, if you've any problems in your life, put it to her, Gwenda. She'll tell you the answer." He laughed, and Gwenda laughed too, but not very heartily. She was introduced to Aunt Jane, otherwise Miss Marple, on the following day. Miss Marple was an attractive old lady, tall and thin, with pink cheeks and blue eyes, and a gentle, rather fussy manner. Her blue eyes often had a little twinkle to them. After an early dinner at which they drank Aunt Jane's health, they all went off to His Majesty's Theatre. 2 extra men, an elderly artist and a young barrister, were in the party. The elderly artist devoted himself to Gwenda, and the young barrister divided his attentions between Joan and Miss Marple, whose remarks he seemed to enjoy very much. At the theater, however, this arrangement was reversed. Gwenda sat in the middle of the row between Raymond and the barrister. The lights went down and the play began. It was superbly acted, and Gwenda enjoyed it very much. She had not seen many first-rate theatrical productions. The play drew to a close, came to that supreme moment of horror. The actor's voice came over the floodlights, filled the tragedy of a warped and perverted mentality. "Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle. She died young." Gwenda screamed. She sprang up from her seat, pushed blindly past the others out into the aisle, through the exit and up the stairs and to the street. She did not stop even then, but half walked, half ran in a blind panic up the Haymarket. It was not until she had reached Piccadilly that she noticed a free taxi cruising along, hailed it, and, getting in, gave the address of the Chelsea house. With fumbling fingers she got out money, paid the taxi, and went up the steps. The servant who let her in glanced at her in surprise. "You've come back early, miss. Didn't you feel well?" Yes, I felt faint." "Would you like anything, miss? Some brandy?" "No, nothing. I'll go straight up to bed." She ran up the stairs to avoid further questions. She pulled off her clothes, left them on the floor in a heap, and got into bed. She lay there shivering, her heart pounding, her eyes staring at the ceiling. She did not hear the sound of fresh arrivals downstairs, but after about 5 minutes the door opened and Miss Marple came in. She had 2 hot water bottles tucked under her arms and a cup in her hand. Gwenda sat up, trying to stop her shivering. "Oh, Miss Marple, I'm frightfully sorry. I don't know what... It was awful of me. Are they very annoyed with me?" "Now don't worry, my dear child," said Miss Marple. "Just tuck yourself up warmly with these hot water bottles." "I don't really need a hot water bottle." "Oh, yes you do. That's right. And now drink this cup of tea." It was hot and strong and far too full of sugar, but Gwenda drank it obediently. The shivering was less acute now. "Just lie down now and go to sleep," Miss Marple said. "You've had a shock, you know. We'll talk about it in the morning. Don't worry about anything. Just go to sleep." She drew the covers up, smiled, patted Gwenda, and went out. Downstairs, Raymond was staring irritably to Joan. What on earth was the matter with the girl? Did she feel ill or what? "My dear Raymond, I don't know. She just screamed. I suppose the play was a bit too macabre for her." "Well, of course Webster is a bit grisly, but I shouldn't have thought..." He broke off as Miss Marple came into the room. "Is she all right?" "Yes, I think so. She's had a bad shock, you know." "Shock? Just seeing an Elizabethan drama?" "I think there must be a little more to it than that," said Miss Marple thoughtfully. Gwenda's breakfast was sent up to her. She drank some coffee and nibbled a little piece of toast. When she got up and came downstairs, Joan had gone to her studio, Raymond was shut up in his workroom, and only Miss Marple was sitting by the window, which had a view over the river. She was busily engaged in knitting. She looked up with a placid smile as Gwenda entered. "Good morning, my dear. You're feeling better, I hope." "Oh, yes, I'm quite all right. How could I make such an utter idiot of myself last night? I don't know. Are they very mad with me?" "Oh no, my dear. They quite understand." "Understand what?" Miss Marple glanced up over her knitting. "That you had a bad shock last night," she added gently. "Hadn't you better tell me all about it?" Gwenda walked restlessly up and down. "I think I'd better go see a psychiatrist or someone. There are excellent mental specialists in London, of course, but are you sure it's necessary?" "Well, I think I'm going mad. I must be going mad." An elderly parlour-maid entered the room with a telegram on a salver, which she handed to Gwenda. "The boy wants to know if there's an answer, ma'am." Gwenda tore it open. It had been re-telegraphed on from Dilmouth. She stared at it for a moment or two uncomprehendingly, then screwed it into a ball. "There's no answer," she said mechanically. The maid left the room. "Not bad news, I hope, dear." "It's Giles, my husband. He's flying home. He'll be here in a week." Her voice was bewildered and miserable. Miss Marple gave a gentle little cough. "Well, surely that is very nice, isn't it?" "Is it? When I'm not sure if I'm mad or not? If I'm mad, I ought never to have married Giles. And the house and everything, I can't go back there. Oh, I don't know what to do." Miss Marple patted the sofa invitingly. "Now, suppose you sit down here, dear, and just tell me all about it." It was with a sense of relief that Gwenda accepted the invitation. She poured out the whole story, starting with her first view of Hillside and going into the incident that had first puzzled her and then worried her. "And so I got rather frightened," she added, "and I thought I'd come up to London, get away from it all. Only, you see, I couldn't get away from it. It followed me. Last night..." She shut her eyes and gulped reminiscently. "Last night?" prompted Miss Marple. "I dare say you won't believe this," said Gwenda, speaking very fast. "You'll think I'm hysterical or queer or something. It happened quite suddenly, right at the end. I'd enjoyed the play. I'd never thought once of the house. And then it came out of the blue when he said those words." She repeated in a low, quivering voice. "Cover her face. Mine eyes dazzle. She died young." I was back there on the stairs, looking down on the hall through the banisters, and I saw her lying there, sprawled out dead, her hair all golden and her face all blue. She was dead, strangled, and someone was saying those words in that same horrible, gloating way, and I saw his hands. Gray, wrinkled. Not hands. Monkey's paws. It was horrible, I tell you. She was dead. Miss Marple asked gently, "Who was dead?" The answer came back quick and mechanical. Helen. Chapter 4. Helen. For a moment, Gwenda stared at Miss Marple. Then she pushed back the hair from her forehead. "Why did I say that?" she said. "Why did I say Helen? I don't know any Helen." She dropped her hands with a gesture of despair. "You see," she said, "I'm mad. I'm imagining things. I go about seeing things that aren't there. First it was only wallpapers, but now it's dead bodies. I'm getting worse." "Now don't rush to conclusions, my dear, or else it's the house. The house is haunted or bewitched or something. I see things that have happened there, or else I see things that are going to happen there. And that would be worse. Perhaps a woman called Helen is going to be murdered there. Only, I don't see if it's the house that's haunted. Why should I see these awful things when I'm away from it? So, I think really that it must be me that's going queer. And I'd better go and see a psychiatrist at once, this morning." "Well, of course, Gwenda dear, you can always do that when you've exhausted every other line of approach. But I always think myself that it's better to examine the simplest and most commonplace explanations first. Let me get the facts quite clear. There were 3 definite incidents that upset you. A path in the garden that had been planted over but that you felt was there. A door that had been bricked up, and a wallpaper which you imagined correctly and in detail without having seen it. Am I right?" "Yes." "Well, the easiest, most natural explanation would be that you had seen them before." "In another life, you mean?" "Well, no, dear. I meant in this life. I meant that they might be actual memories." "But I've never been to England until a month ago, Miss Marple." "You are quite sure of that, my dear?" "Of course I'm sure. I've lived near Christchurch in New Zealand my whole life." "Were you born there?" "No, I was born in India. My father was a British Army officer. My mother died a year or 2 after I was born, and he sent me back to her people in New Zealand to bring up. Then he himself died a few years later." "You don't remember coming from India to New Zealand?" "Not really. I do remember frightfully vaguely being on a boat. A round window thing. A portal, I suppose. And a man in a white uniform with a red face and blue eyes and a mark on his chin. A scar, I suppose. He used to toss me up in the air, and I remember being half frightened and half loving it, but it's all very fragmentary." "Do you remember a nurse or an ayah?" "Not an ayah, a nanny. I remember a nanny because she stayed for some time, until I was 5 years old. She cut ducks out of paper. Yes, she was on the boat. She scolded me when I cried because the captain kissed me and I didn't like his beard." "Now that's very interesting, dear, because you see, you are mixing up 2 different voyages. In one, the captain had a beard, and in the other, he had a red face and a scar on his chin." "Yes," Gwenda considered, I suppose I must be." "It seems possible to me," said Miss Marple, "that when your mother died, your father brought you to England with him first, and that you actually lived at this house, Hillside. You told me, you know, that the house felt like home to you as soon as you got inside it, and that room you chose to sleep in was probably your nursery." "It was a nursery. There were bars on the windows." "You see? It had this pretty gay paper of cornflowers and poppies. Children remember their nursery walls very well. I've always remembered the mauve irises on my nursery walls, and yet I believe it was repapered when I was only 3. "And that's why I thought at once of toys, the doll's house and the toy cupboards?" "Yes, and the bathroom. The bath with the mahogany surround. You told me you thought of sailing ducks in it as soon as you saw it." Gwenda said thoughtfully, "It's true that I seemed to know right away just where everything was. The kitchen and the linen cupboard, and that I kept thinking that there was a door through from the drawing room to the sitting room. But surely it's quite impossible that I should come to England and actually buy the identical house that I'd lived in long ago. It's not impossible, my dear. It's just a very remarkable coincidence, and remarkable coincidences do happen. Your husband wanted a house on the south coast. You were looking for one. You passed by a house that stirred memories and attracted you. It was the right size and reasonable price, so you bought it. No, it's not too wildly improbable. Had the house merely been what it was called, perhaps rightly a haunted house, you would have reacted quite differently, I think. But you had no feelings of violence or repulsion, except, so you have told me, at one very definite moment, and that was when you were just starting to come down the staircase looking down from the hall. Some of the scared expression came back into Gwenda's eyes. She said, "You mean that Helen, that's true too?" Miss Marple said very gently, "Well, I think so, my dear. I think we must face the possibility that if the other things are memory, that is a memory too." That I really saw someone killed, strangled, and lying there dead? I don't suppose you knew consciously that she was strangled. That was suggested by the play last night and fits with your adult recognition of what a blue convulsed face must mean. I think a very young child, creeping down the stairs, would realize violence and death and evil and associate them with a certain series of words. For I think that there is no doubt that the murderer accidentally, or actually, said those words. It would be a very severe shock to a child. Children are odd little creatures. If they are badly frightened, especially by something they don't understand, they don't talk about it. They bottle it up. Seemingly, perhaps they forget it, but that memory is still there deep down. Gwenda drew a deep breath. And do you think that's what happened to me? But why don't I remember it all now? One can't remember to order, and often when one tries to, the memory goes farther away. But I think there are one or two indications that is what did happen. For instance, when you told me just now about your experience in the theater last night, you used a very revealing turn of words. You said you seemed to be looking through the banisters. But normally, you know, one doesn't look down a hall through the banisters, but over them. Only a child would look through. That's very clever of you, said Gwenda appreciatively. These little things are very significant. But who was Helen? Asked Gwenda in a bewildered way. Tell me, my dear, are you quite sure it was Helen? Yes. It's frightfully odd because I don't know who Helen is, but at the same time I know that it was Helen lying there. How am I going to find out more? Well, I think the obvious thing to do is to find out definitely if you were ever in England as a child, or if you could have been. Your relations, Gwenda interrupted. Aunt Allison! She would know, I'm sure. Then I should write to her by airmail, or send a night mail letter. Tell her circumstances have arisen which make it imperative for you to know if you have ever been in England. You would probably get an answer by airmail by the time your husband arrives. Oh, thank you, Miss Marple. You've been frightfully kind, and I do hope what you've suggested is true, because, if so, well, it's quite all right. I mean, it won't be anything supernatural. Miss Marple smiled. I hope it turns out as we think. I am going to stay with some old friends of mine in the north of England the day after tomorrow. I shall be passing back through London in about 10 days. If you and your husband are here then, or if you have received an answer to your letter, I should be very curious to know the result. Of course, dear Miss Marple. Anyway, I want you to meet Giles. He's a perfect pet, and we'll have a good powwow about the whole thing. Gwenda's spirits were fully restored by now. Miss Marple, however, looked thoughtful.